Hey, folks, welcome again to Soaring Profits. As always, it's Patrick and
James.
And we're here tonight talking to you about what's happening in the news around us. And one of the big events that's happened in the last couple of days here is the New York Metro subway shooting, bombing, fireworks show, whatever we want to call it. And we've got a short clip here that we're going to play from MSNBC, and we're going to have a little discussion about it afterwards and what's going on and what our view is on this. So let's take a look here.
What do you got?
We're checking out reports that Frank James has been arrested in Manhattan. Law enforcement officials tell our affiliate WNBC that an arrest was made at St. Mark's and First Avenue just a short time ago, that the suspect was involved in some kind of altercation, possibly a stabbing, and has now been taken to the local police precinct for prosecuting. And authorities believe that it is Frank James, the man they've been looking for since 8:30 yesterday morning, when shots were fired aboard a New York subway train as it was heading into Manhattan. There's been an all-out manhunt for him. The gun has been traced to him. His van was found. Authorities now believe he spent the night last night sleeping in that van. Some indication that he was continuing to use the subway at least part of yesterday. And a $50,000 reward was offered. We don't know exactly what tipped police off to the presence. Perhaps it was the report of some kind of altercation. But in any event, we're awaiting a news conference at 2 o'clock. This news conference was to be about a request for public health in finding him, but now it appears that they'll have something entirely different to say. Initial reports that Frank James has been arrested in Manhattan, Chuck.
Well, that is a relief to a bunch of people living in New York City. And
so first and foremost, this is not Frank James.
No,
had to cover the basis there. Had to cover the basis there. Yep.
The other James.
Well, so this event and what we've been seeing of late here is we've had a lot of talk about domestic terrorism. And I think something that we'd like to talk about today is terrorism, what spurs, what is terrorism, and what are we seeing? Why are we seeing a rise in these homegrown bombing shootings? What's going on?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say, this is a tragedy. A lot of people were affected. A lot of people were scared. A lot of people are probably still scared because, he was missing for so long. So we're not like anything we say here. We're kind of lighthearted and stuff like that. And we don't mean to offend anyone as we talk. You know what? We both really believe this was an awful tragedy. Should never have happened. And this man, I don't know, this goes back to gun lobbying and stuff like that, because apparently quite a while ago, he was arrested for terrorism stuff. And it's just quite shocking that he was able to legally buy a gun. But that was a podcast that we did earlier. I just thought I'd throw that in there, a little liberal dig. Well,
again, with your liberal dig there, from what I understand, and again, what we're doing is we're getting a lot of secondary information until, we're able to kind of dig a little deeper in this. Still very fresh. It sounds like he purchased the gun 11 years ago. And the way that they're making it sound right now is that he purchased it at a pawn shop in Ohio. So I know that the Ohio gun laws, and myself and my family, we're down in Ohio a lot. Go Cleveland Browns. Thank you. I accept everyone's apologies and sympathies for that matter. Mostly sympathies, yeah. But again, the Ohio gun laws are what they are. The issue to me is that we have a situation in which we had an individual who clearly has a mental health problem, clearly was posting, apparently from what we're hearing right now, was posting racist diatribes on the internet, on YouTube, on a podcast type platform. Yeah. And there was nothing done. There was nobody that raised the red flag. There was nobody that said, hey, whoa, this guy seems like he's becoming, problematic.
A little bit serious, like saying things like it's a good start for some of these other terrorist things, like the Vegas incident and stuff like that. That's problematic, especially since he's a known gun owner.
Right. So New York City, and this kind of goes back to the conversation we had the other day, New York City in and of itself has some of the strictest gun laws in the country, in the world, to be honest, right? And what we saw is that criminals with criminal intent that have bad intentions, we end up in a situation where They'll use the fireworks. They'll use the smoke bombs. They will use a knife. It sounds like he was arrested after an altercation and whatever that looks like. Again, all of the information that we're playing with right now.
Yeah.
I'm not
We
saying
just got
MS, right. I'm not saying MSNBC is the be all end all. Everyone has their opinion.
Yeah.
But what a couple of things that we wanted to touch base on is, the domestic terrorism aspect, terrorism on a grander scale. And and what it's doing to us as a nation, as a Western society and an ideology. And as crazy as this sounds, this actually goes back to kind of the market stuff that I try to follow really closely. Companies like Palantir, a company that I have professed to be, that I think is a fantastic organization and company, they specialize in anti-terrorism and counterterrorism intelligence. And that's where I got to wonder how did this guy slip through the cracks?
It's very interesting considering he was so out there spreading the message. But then, like we talked about, like things like Facebook and the social media platforms send the message to the people who want to hear it. So if the people who wanted to hear what he was saying were hearing his message, it would be unlikely that anyone would say anything about him. You would think that his family and stuff would, but like it's not like you and I would have him pop up on our Facebook, is what I'm saying. You and I would go, whoa, maybe someone should take a look at this guy. So it's possible that it's that kind of algorithm that the social networks use. I'm not sure.
But okay, so with that being said, and I don't think you're wrong in saying that, but how is it that, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all of these platforms, they're able to target a soccer mom in Kansas City who's like, I don't think my kid should have to wear a mask at school. But we have this guy who's going out, and from what I'm understanding, and again, I'm not 100% on all of this.
No,
but he's going out. He's going out and apparently spreading messages about murdering white people and starting a race war, and that black brothers have got to stand up, and that they have to rebel, and that for every one dead white person, the X, right?
Yeah.
So how do you take Sandra O'Connor, made up fictitious person in Kansas City, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri, whichever one you want to go with, and she ends up as a terrorist watch list because she goes to her school board meeting and goes, I don't want to mask my child anymore. But Frank James over here,
the difference is who's hearing that message. So when she goes to the school board council, the school board would report her, and then they would see they would start collecting that data and they would find it. Whereas this guy probably, if he was going to a meeting, it would be a meeting of like interests. But it's happened many times. Like the Vegas guy, there was some evidence of that. A lot of school shootings, the kids on their social media show evidence of intent, or even like they have an idea that it will happen, like posing with guns and talking about school being bad and stuff like that. But it
what do you
just
do in that
depends on who
situation?
gets that information. Like, I think if you are worried, you should at least reach out to that person. I think you should really talk to that person and ask them, find out what they're talking about. See,
and I agree with that. I agree with that. I've had instances in my personal life where I will have someone on, Instagram or Facebook or that sort of thing, and you're starting to see that the diatribe or the rant that they're taking on, is taking a little bit of a sinister, weird spin. And a simple, hey, just wanted to reach out. Hope everything's good. If you need anything, just let me know. One situation, she was having a terrible time. She was really struggling and kind of was able to articulate that. And I said to her, I'm like, you need to be able to slow down. Like, just relax. Everything's going to be fine. What can I do to help you? And that was something that in my personal life that worked out well. On the other hand, I think maybe it's that these people, they just don't have the echo chamber or the ecosystem even around them to get that sort of support, right?
Yeah, no, I would get that. Yeah, like if a lot of these people are loners, feel like they're isolated from society, society's turned on them. So yeah, they might not have the people like you and I around them that that would notice a change in their behavior.
Right.
So that there's no one to go, hey, what's going on? You would hope a parent would notice, but maybe in some cases the parent doesn't notice. It's hard to say. But getting back to where we were started with terrorism, It's funny how over my lifetime, the whole word definition of terrorism has changed. Like, so when I was younger,
Absolutely.
terrorism was an organized group that organized a plot to do damage or kill other people. And then it kind of morphed. And I think, I don't know, like the first time that I noticed it, and I'm sure it happened before that, but the first time I noticed it was the insurrection. The insurrection was a terrorist attack on the Capitol. And then the most current in Canada was the truckers thing, where our prime minister.
There's some heavy air quoting there for something that happened, and that was like a real thing.
But our prime minister basically said they were a minority group that
exact quote is a fringe minority with unacceptable views.
Right. Yeah, yeah. But he leaned towards, like, a lot of people leaned in that they were terrorists.
100%.
Right.
100%.
And
so
this is what is the definition of terrorism? Like, I think this guy right here, although he doesn't have a group behind him, he created a lot of terror. And if that's what we're saying that what terrorism is now is that it doesn't necessarily need to be a group. It just is, if you cause mass terror, you are a terrorist. I can accept that. But if a group isn't causing terror and they're just a group, is that terrorism? I just don't know.
Let's go back to you're, I guess, new to the political terrorism world. I like to think that I've been following it a little bit longer. But the big crux, the big emphasis of terrorism started at 9/11, right? The war on terror, all of these names, and we were going to win the battle and win the war on terrorism. And George.
So
Bush
that's
had a
when
plan,
terrorism
right?
was really brought to our shores. Like terrorism, we talked about terrorism when I was younger. It was something that happened
over
across
there,
the water. Yeah. Like there were a couple of things in maybe England or Paris or those places, or, you know, in the Middle East, there was a ton in the Middle East that we'd hear about. But it was always over there, something we could watch and go, oh, that's horrific. That's awful.
Right.
And we could throw up a flag on our Facebook.
Absolutely. And even before Facebook, right? But and again, I remember growing up and you had the Palestinians and the Israelis, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, had Yasser Arafat
or even your people, the Irish.
Yay. Little IRA in us, little rebellious. So again, going back to what the definition of terrorism is, and I after 9/11, that pivoted, right? It went from an organization, a structure, a group of people, and it pivoted to, Unabomber, right? You had somebody like that who was a terrorist, a domestic grown terrorist.
Right.
But the problem with terrorism as a holistic viewpoint is that terrorism, if broken down, it can be the bully in the schoolyard. It can be a bad teacher. It could be like if somebody structurally throughout their day is being, maligned in some format, is that terrorism? And I feel like we've lost the position of it. And when it is terrorism, the soccer mom in Kansas City is not a terrorist.
No.
This guy here goes out. We've had these conversations before, you know, what violent speech and all that kind of crap. And I am 100% a free speech advocate. If you disagree with it, prove it wrong, prove it stupid, move on. It's easy.
Absolutely.
It's easy to prove it's stupid.
Very easy.
I do it all the time.
Yeah. Well, he tries to, but anyway, but no, absolutely right. No, I am a firm believer. I'm more liberal, more moderate. And I do think that some speech can be hurtful. But even then, even hurtful speech is not hate speech. I think hate speech is drawing a line in the sand and always has been for me. If you are breeding that someone will get hurt because of words that you're saying, and that's a tricky situation because they say, oh, he created this. But what I'm saying is, if I were to say, I want a whole group of people to grab Pat and drag him down the road, that's hate speech. But if I just say, man, I hate Pat, he is such a jerk, and I really like to roll over him in my car, I'm not going to do it, but it would be cool if it happened. I don't think that's hate speech. There's a difference. There's a definite difference. You're not promoting people to be hurt. You're not trying to kill a group. You're not trying to promote that racist agenda to hurt someone.
Right.
Just not liking black people, which I do like black people. That's not what I'm saying, but just not liking black people is not hate speech.
Right.
It's wrong, but it's not hate speech.
Absolutely.
Right. It's not hate speech in the definition, the legal definition, where it causes violence is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well,
if that makes sense.
And I think that our systems that we've established here are holding terrorism in this weird threshold. Do not get me wrong. I am a staunch supporter of Western ideology. I think Western society is the most equitable and most fair society that has ever been known. But it's pretty hard to look at a situation like the Julian Assange, if any of you don't know the story of that, with WikiLeaks and the light that was shed during the Iraq War, Iraq conflict, whatever you want to call it, not Desert Storm, Operation Freedom, because that was terrorism. And we've seen this gentleman here who he was simply sharing information, right, wrong, or indifferent, whether you believe him or not. Right. But this man has forfeited his freedom, again, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of association with sharing this information. And now he's fighting for his life and likely is going to be extradited for these things. It's definitely something you want to look into. It's been a number of years since Assange was imprisoned after his stay in the Ecuadorian embassy.
It's been a number of years since he's been in the news, unless you deep dive and you follow him yourself.
Right.
No one even thinks of him. No one thinks about what he's done. And as far as I know, like they were trying to say that the information that he leaked would hurt people in the military or hurt people. As far as I know, it hasn't, but I would think if it had, there would be stories out there saying that it had. Right. But as far as I know, it hasn't. So again, like, how do they get to keep him incarcerated for so long without his day in court? I agree.
Well, I think that's the process.
I'm not saying that he is a good person, bad person. I'm just saying to keep someone that incarcerated for that long without a day in court, that just seems wrong.
Right. And my point with Assange is that he was shining a little bit of light on there's two fronts to every war. And we've had these conversations with the Russian-Ukraine stuff that's going on right now. And it's a terrible scenario. And a war at any point is terrible. But awful. The victors write the history books, folks. And we as Western nations are looking at it from a Ukrainian positive profile. And, Eastern Bloc, Eastern nations, China, Russia, these powerful countries now are going to spin and look at it from the other side. So there is two sides. And unfortunately, we did show the clip from MSNBC tonight, but that's what we're trying to do something with this podcast is to open up and be like, hey, is there two sides to this? Of course there is. What's happening here? This gentleman in New York, this sounds like a fairly clear-cut domestic terror incident, but I got to start asking questions. As we dig a little deeper into this, is it ironic that the cameras, for instance, weren't working?
It seems like the amount of cameras that weren't working seems strange, considering that when he gets on the train, at a different station, that's where they pick him up. All those cameras work. Right. But this one station, I can't remember how many cameras. Let's say 60 cameras. There was like a weird amount of cameras to all be off at the same time. Right. In a place like New York, that is, like it's been a few years since they've had a terrorist attack, but I would imagine that they would want all of their cameras working.
740 days without terrorism. Now we just rip that off and go one.
Okay. Funny joke, but a little dark.
Too soon.
Too soon. A little too soon.
We'll get there.
But yeah, like, so I agree with you. Like, why weren't the cameras working? It'd be interesting to know. Maybe he was able to do something.
Well, where's other times that we've heard some malfunctioning cameras in the media?
I seem to remember a prison that the camera didn't work right at the exact time that someone decided to kill himself.
And there was
pertinent information maybe about some people that didn't want that to be known.
And did his name starts with a J and does his last name start with an Epstein?
It started with Epstein. Yeah. That's the guy. And not only that, there's a woman that apparently knows a whole lot, and I don't know where she's gone. Do you know where?
Well, again, these are kind of the issues that we like to kind of bring up.
We're off terrorism now, but still.
No, we'll be back. I promise.
We'll get back.
But these are the things that we like to bring up a little bit. Is that it's ironic that the drum beating and war in Ukraine starts filing in right around the time that she was testifying.
Yes.
Right.
Not that
So
not that there's a correlation, but it does.
could be.
I know that I'm not hearing about it.
Right. So
Yeah.
when it's everyone in the world is beating
Mhm.
drums and looking at Russia and
Yeah.
Ukraine and talking about nuclear war, some of the most powerful people in the world that Jeffrey Epstein was tied to, and if you don't know about Jeffrey Epstein, that is a topic that we'll have to do.
That
one
is
day.
the topic we should go in.
That's a deep dive.
That was a sick individual.
Right. And we
that
know
helped
nothing
a lot
about
of
it.
sick people.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we know nothing about it.
Very little.
And the problem is that it seems to be well covered up. It seems like they don't want people to know about it. And for what reason? Like, this is something that needs to be talked about, needs to be shown. What is the scale of the bigger problem, right? So going back to the terrorism side of this, is that Joe Biden just had a conference the other day about gun control, and it was these ghost guns, and that you can order parts from all over the nation and put them together in your home. Right. And they've been talking about for years 3D printing technologies and the ability to print a gun at home.
They were talking about online. There was this gentleman that developed a working gun, and he was putting it online, not making money off it, as far as I know. And people were upset with him because he had developed this technology that anyone could develop, and people were printing out working guns that no one could track. You could probably take on an airplane if you didn't have bullets in it, you know. And so it was a concern. Yeah.
So the irony of these situations, the timing, and again, this is just opinion. Like, I don't have all the facts, I don't have all the information, but to have these incidences that there's no cameras, they have a history of this guy. I'm brought back to an old saying that is kind of slowly becoming resurgent here, of a false flag effort. And I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this before, but in the old pirate days, and this is how far this goes back, is that boats would fly the flag of their nation. And that's how they identified at distance. And the false flag was that a pirate ship would fly the flag of a nation, of a boat that they had already captured. Say it's British, say it's Dutch, say it's whatever. And they would use it to get close to the position that they wanted to do, until they had an advantageous position. And then they would change flags and open fire on the unsuspecting victims, right? Well, we've seen false flag efforts in our recent history. I go back to everyone's favorite Nazi Germany, and when they burnt down the Capitol. Well, they blamed it on the Jews, they blamed it on the communists, they blamed it on where most historians, I believe, would say that was the Nazi party in and of themselves. But it gave them a control.
And to bring that to current times, like during some of the current protests that we've had over the last 2, 3, 4 years, there have been elements inside those that have created like damage and thrown rocks and smashed things and flipped cars that had nothing to do with the protest, but yet the protest was blamed for it. And they have proof of that. Like, it's not like I'm just making this up. They actually have proof that these people had nothing to do with it. They're just shit disturbers. They just like chaos, so they go and do chaos. Well, we saw that in the G20 events in Toronto. I remember years ago absolutely,
when they had the G20 protests, they had the black bloc, and these were the individuals that were completely dressed, but then they became identifiable. Right,
because they were dressed
like it was a uniform,
combat boots, and they had absolutely.
But so my question was, and I remember watching that as a younger man and looking at it and going, why did they park the cruisers there?
You know what, a lot of people have brought that up, because during that kind of that time what they ended up doing is they burnt a few cruisers and damaged them. But they were just left behind. Now, I believe the Toronto police were saying it was just a positional thing, and it was kind of not intended to incite violence, but it ended up doing it.
Makes for really good newspapers when you got a burnt out cruiser on Bay Street.
I have heard that opinion being reached. Absolutely.
Right. So, and that's where I think, we are today with the media, and, we've turned this from terrorism into the media, but the media is sensationalism. And if it bleeds, it leads. And that's what at the end of the day, we talk a little bit about what we're trying to do with this podcast, but we're trying to bring information, keep it, concise. This has gotten run a little bit longer than I figured it probably would.
Keep it short, keep it simple, keep
Right.
it fresh,
Right.
keep on topic, all those things. Yeah.
Right. Tonight. Yeah. But this is a quick podcast you can throw on in the morning going to work, heading off for your daily commute, and have a laugh because we're ridiculous. So, like, why not?
You almost said that other R word.
I would never. That's terrible. Not this guy. I'd say all sort of other terrible words, but not that.
But not that one. No,
yeah.
no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, like we hope that you get something from our content, and like comment, subscribe, share with other people, have a laugh, or maybe it stirs on a conversation at your dinner table, which is what I really hope. I really hope that these videos we do, you'll take it, you'll go to your buddy and go, hey, have you seen this? What do you think about what's going on with Epstein or with whatever, or with terrorism? What is terrorism? Let's talk about that, because those are the conversations that I loved around the fire, around the table, with my dad, with a group of friends. Those are the deep dive conversations that we all should be having, especially if some of the stuff that this tinfoil hat guy over here says is true, which there might be a little bit of truth because I've seen it.
Well, that's the dangerous part.
Definitely with Epstein.
That's the dangerous part.
Something fishy about that.
Right. So the kernel of truth allows for you to dig deeper and pull more on that thread, right? Folks, again, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Like, subscribe, and share. And if you got somebody that you think would find this interesting, our ramblings of madmen that we are.
And you know what? I'd be really interested. What do you think the definition of terrorism? Comment and tell us what you think the definition of terrorism and let's start a healthy chat, about what it is. Like, I think that would
because nothing on the internet says healthy chat like divisive politics. So that should be fair. All right, folks. Thanks again. Appreciate you guys coming by and visiting. We'll see you again. Like, subscribe, share, and comment. I'm Patrick from Soaring Profits.
And I'm James from Soaring Profits.
There you go. Let's make some money together, folks.
Hey folks, thanks again for joining us at Soaring Profits. Patrick and James, please like, subscribe, and share, and
follow us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and of course, Facebook. And let's start a dinner table discussion right on this page right here. Let's start talking about the topics that we're talking about today.
Thanks again, folks. Appreciate it.